Hello to everybody. Introduce myself. My name is Nate Thomas, and I'm the Education Programs Manager here at the Clinton Center. And we're really excited to have you guys here with us this morning. I see our attendee count has kind of leveled out, so we'll go ahead and get started with this morning's program. Hello, and welcome to Conversations with Anne, an annual partnership with the Anne Frank Center of Mutual Respect. Our partnership with the Anne Frank Center was deepened on October 5th, 2015, when the Anne Frank tree exhibit was dedicated. And in 2009, the Clinton Center was one of 11 entities in the US to be awarded a young chestnut tree by the Anne Frank Center USA's Sapling Project. For those that have not had a chance to see our outdoor exhibit, the sapling was taken from the white horse chestnut tree that stood outside Anne Frank's secret annex when she and her family were in hiding from Nazis during World War II. The young writer cherished and wrote about this tree frequently in her famous diary. The center's installation consists of 5 framed etched glass panels, arranged to evoke the feeling of being inside of a room, surrounded by complementary natural landscaping. The 2 front panels feature quotes from Anne Frank and President Clinton. The 3 additional panels convey the complex history of human rights in Arkansas through descriptions of the Indian Removal Act of 1830, the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, and the Little Rock Central High School desegregation crisis of 1957. These panels feature quotes from Chief Hecatoon, hereditary chief of the Quapaw during the Arkansas Indian removal, George Takei, a Japanese American actor who was interned at the Rower Relocation Center in Desha County, Arkansas in 1942, and Melba Beals, a member of the Little Rock Nine. The Anne Frank tree sapling provides an opportunity for the Clinton Center to tell the story of Anne Frank and introduce intersections of injustice witnessed throughout Arkansas history. It's located at the public park at the Clinton Center, and if you are in or around the area, we encourage you to drop by and pay a visit. I'm now excited to introduce Morgan Bailey, Director of Exhibitions with the Anne Frank Partnership, to introduce today's program. Morgan?
Thank you so much, Nate. Welcome, everyone, to today's performance of Conversations with Anne. We at the Anne Frank Center for Mutual Respect address civil and human rights issues across America and endeavor to call out prejudice, counter discrimination, and advocate for the kinder and fairer world of which Anne Frank dreamed. We'll begin in just a moment. As a reminder, after today's performance, you will have a chance to speak with Anne and ask her questions. Now, you can ask her questions about her life as a young girl in Amsterdam and about her life in hiding. Now, keep in mind, she doesn't know about anything that will happen to her after August of 1944, when the secret annex was raided. Anne was one of 6 million Jews who were persecuted by the Nazis during World War II. Anne and her family moved from Germany to Amsterdam in the mid-1930s. Hitler and the Nazi Party were rising to power, and Anne's parents wanted to escape the growing danger. In 1939, World War II began, and in 1940, Hitler invaded the Netherlands. Anne was just 13 years old when she went into hiding with her family in the secret annex in Amsterdam in 1942. Now, in the annex, Anne's greatest companion was her diary, which she named Kitty. Over the next 2 years, she confessed to Kitty details of life in the annex, the horrors of the war outside, her fears for what would happen to her family, and her dreams of freedom. Today, you will have the chance to hear some of the things that Anne confided to Kitty. We will start on the day of her 13th birthday, June 12, 1942, about a month before she would go into hiding. Anne had her friends from school visit her home to play games, eat strawberry cake, and watch a film that her father, Otto, rented. While you watch the performance, think of questions that you would like to ask Anne afterwards. Without further ado, we are pleased to present to you Conversations with Anne.
June 12th, 1942. I hope I will be able to confide everything to you as I have never been able to confide in anyone. And I hope you will be a great source of comfort and support. Saturday, June 20th, 1942. Writing in a diary is really a strange experience for someone like me. Not only because I've never written anything before, but also because it seems to me that later on, neither I nor anyone else would be interested in the musings of a 13-year-old schoolgirl. Oh well, it doesn't matter. I feel like writing, and I have an even greater need to get all kinds of things off my chest. Paper has more patience than people. I thought of this saying on one of those days when I was feeling a little depressed, sitting at home with my chin in my hands, bored and listless, wondering whether to stay in or go out. I finally stayed where I was, brooding. Yes, paper does have more patience. And since I'm not planning on letting anyone else read this stiff back notebook grandly referred to as a diary, unless I should ever find a real friend, it probably won't make a bit of difference. Now I'm back to the point that prompted me to keep a diary in the first place. I don't have a friend. Let me put that more clearly, since no one will believe that a 13-year-old girl is completely alone in the world, and I'm not. There are about 30 people I could call friends. I have a family, loving aunts, and a good home. No, on the surface, I seem to have everything, except my one true friend. To enhance the image of this long-awaited friend in my imagination, I don't want to jot down the facts in this diary the way most people would do, but I want the diary to be my friend. And I'm going to call this friend Kitty.
De nazi's nemen er geen genoegen mee.
The evacuation of London and other large towns continued today, and reports from all over the country show
Sie wollten, Herr, kompromisslos die einzige Macht und alleinige Macht in Deutschland.
Wednesday, July 8th, 1942. Dearest Kitty, it seems like years since Sunday morning. So much has happened, it's as if the whole world had suddenly turned upside down. But as you can see, Kitty, I'm still alive. And that's the main thing, Father says. Yes, I'm alive, but don't ask where or how. You probably don't understand a word I'm saying today, so I'll begin by telling you what happened Sunday afternoon. At 3 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I didn't hear it since I was out on the balcony lazily reading in the sun. A few moments later, Margot appeared in the kitchen doorway looking very agitated. Father's received a call-up notice from the SS, she whispered. I was stunned. A call-up? Everyone knows what that means. Visions of concentration camps and lonely cells raced through my head. How could we let Father go to such a fate? Of course he's not going, declared Margot as we waited for Mother in the living room. Mother's gone to Mr. Van Pels to ask if we can move to our hiding place tomorrow morning. The Van Pels are going with us. There'll be 7 of us all together. Silence. We couldn't speak. The thought of Father off visiting someone at the Jewish hospital and completely unaware of what was happening. The long wait for Mother, the heat, the suspense. All of this reduced us to silence. When she and I were sitting in our bedroom, Margot told me that the call-up wasn't for Father, but for her. At the second shock, I began to cry. Margot is 16. Apparently, they want to send girls her age away on their own. Margot and I started packing our most important belongings into a school bag. The first thing I stuck in was this diary, then curlers, handkerchiefs, school books, a comb, and some old letters. Preoccupied by the thought of going into hiding, I stuck the craziest things in the bag, but I'm not sorry. Memories mean more to me than dresses. Father finally came home around 5 o'clock and called Mr. Clyment to ask if he could come by later that evening. Mr. Van Pels left and went to get Meep. Meep arrived and promised to return later that evening, taking with her a bag full of shoes, dresses, jackets, underwear, and stockings. After that, it was quiet in our apartment. None of us felt like eating. It was still hot and everything was very strange. I was exhausted, and even though I knew it would be my last night in my own bed, I fell asleep right away and didn't wake up until Mother called me at 5:30 the next morning. Fortunately, it wasn't as hot as it was on Sunday. A warm rain fell throughout the day. The 4 of us were wrapped in so many layers of clothes it looked as if we were off to spend the night in a refrigerator. And all that, just so we could bring more clothes with us. No Jew in our situation would dare leave the house with a suitcase full of clothes. Margot stuffed her school bag with school books, went to get a bicycle, and with Meep leading the way, rode off into the great unknown. At any rate, that's how I thought of it, since I still didn't know where our hiding place was. At 7:30, we too closed the door behind us. Mortia, my cat, was the only living creature I said goodbye to. The stripped beds, the breakfast things on the table, the pound of meat for the cat in the kitchen. All of these created the impression that we'd left in a hurry. But we weren't interested in impressions. We just wanted to get out of there, to get away and reach our destination in safety. Nothing else mattered. Yours, Anne.
Friday, August 21st, 1942. Dear Kitty, now our secret annex has truly become a secret. Because so many houses are being searched for the hidden bicycles, Mr. Kugler thought it would be better to have a bookcase built in front of the entrance to our hiding place. It swings out on its hinges and opens like a door. Now, whenever we want to go downstairs, we have to duck and then jump. After the first 3 days, We were all walking around with bumps on our foreheads from banging our heads against the low doorway. Then Peter cushioned it by nailing a towel stuffed with wood shavings to the door frame. Let's see if it helps. Yours, Anne. Thursday, November 19th, 1942. Dearest Kitty, night after night, green and gray military vehicles cruise the streets. They knock on every door, asking whether any Jews live there. If so, the whole family is immediately taken away. If not, they proceed to the next house. It's impossible to escape their clutches unless you go into hiding. They often go around with lists, knocking only on those doors where they know there's a big haul to be made. They frequently offer a bounty. So much per head. It's like the slave hunts of the olden days. In the evenings when it's dark, I often see long lines of good, innocent people accompanied by crying children, walking on and on, ordered about by a handful of men who bully and beat them until they nearly drop. No one is spared. The sick, the elderly, children, babies, and pregnant women. All are marched to their death. We are so fortunate here, away from the turmoil. We wouldn't have to give a moment's thought to all this suffering if it weren't for the fact that we're so worried about those we hold dear, whom we can no longer help. I feel wicked, sleeping in a warm bed, while somewhere out there my dearest friends are dropping from exhaustion or being knocked to the ground. I get frightened myself when I think of close friends who are now at the mercy of the cruelest monsters ever to stalk the earth. And all because they're Jews. Yours, Anne. Wednesday, January 13th, 1943. Dearest Kitty, terrible things are happening outside. At any time of night and day, poor innocent people are being dragged out of their homes. They're allowed to take only a knapsack and a little cash with them, and even then they're robbed of these possessions along the way. Families are torn apart. Men, women, and children are separated. Children come home from school to find their parents have disappeared. Women return from shopping to find their houses sealed, their families gone. The Christians in Holland are also living in fear because their sons are being sent off to Germany. Every night, hundreds of planes pass over Holland on their way to German cities to sow their bombs on German soil. Every hour, hundreds, maybe even thousands of people are being killed in Russia, in Africa. And no one can keep out of the conflict. The entire world is at war, and even though the Allies are doing better, the end is nowhere in sight. All we can do is wait, as calmly as possible for it to end. Jews and Christians alike are waiting. The whole world is waiting. And many are waiting for death. Yours, Anne.
Wednesday, February 23rd, 1944. My dearest Kitty, I go to the attic almost every morning to get the stale air out of my lungs. This morning when I went there, Peter was busy cleaning up. He finished quickly and came over to where I was sitting on my favorite spot on the floor. The two of us looked out at the blue sky, the bare chestnut tree glistening with dew, the seagulls and other birds glinting with silver as they swooped through the air. And we were so moved and entranced that we couldn't speak. We breathed in the air, looked outside, and both felt that the spell shouldn't be broken with words. We remained like this for a long while. And by the time he had to go up to the loft to chop wood, I knew he was a good, decent boy. He climbed the ladder to the loft, and I followed. During the 15 minutes he was chopping wood, we didn't say a word either. I watched him from where I was standing, and I could tell he was obviously doing his best to chop the right way and to show off his strength. But I also looked out the open window, letting my eyes roam over a large part of Amsterdam, over the rooftops and onto the horizon. A strip of blue so pale, it was almost invisible. As long as this exists, I thought, this sunshine and this cloudless sky, and as long as I can enjoy it, how can I be sad? The best remedy for those who are frightened, lonely, or unhappy is to go outside, somewhere where they can be alone. Alone with the sky, nature, and God. For then, and only then, can you feel that everything is as it should be, and that God wants people to be happy amid nature's beauty and simplicity. As long as this exists, and that should be forever, I know that there will be solace for every sorrow, whatever the circumstances. I firmly believe that nature can bring comfort to all who suffer. Yours, Anne.
Onze vorstin, Hare Majesteit Koningin Wilhelmina, zal aanstonds tot u spreken. Hiermede wordt ingeleid een geregelde radio-uitzending op dit uur van een
Wednesday,
Nederlands programma
March 29th,
dat onder de
1944. Dearest Kitty, Mr. Bolkestein, the cabinet minister, speaking on the Dutch broadcast from London, said that after the war, a collection would be made of diaries and letters dealing with the war. Of course, everyone pounced on my diary. Just imagine how interesting it would be if I were to publish a novel about the secret annex. The title alone would make people think it was a detective story. Seriously though, 10 years after the war, people would find it very amusing to read how we lived, what we ate, and what we talked about as Jews in hiding. Although I tell you a great deal about our lives, you still know very little about us. How frightened the women are during air raids. Last Sunday, for instance, when 350 British planes dropped 550 tons of bombs in IJmuiden so that the houses trembled like blades of grass in the wind. Or how many epidemics are raging here? You know nothing of these matters, and it would take me all day to describe everything down to the last detail. People have to stand in line to buy vegetables and all kinds of goods. Doctors
can't visit their patients, since their cars and bikes get stolen the moment they turn their backs. Burglaries and thefts are so common that you begin to ask yourself what suddenly got into the Dutch to make them so light-fingered. Little children, 8 and 11-year-olds, smash the windows of people's houses and steal whatever they can get their hands on. People don't dare leave the house for even 5 minutes, since they're liable to return and find all their belongings gone. Morale among the Dutch can't be good. Everyone's hungry. Except the ersatz coffee. A week's food ration doesn't last 2 days. The invasion's long in coming. The children are sick or undernourished. Everyone's wearing worn-out clothes and run-down shoes. One good thing has come out of this. As the food gets worse and the decrees more severe, the acts of sabotage against the authorities are increasing. The ration board, the police, the officials, they are all either helping their fellow citizen or denouncing them and sending them off to prison. Fortunately, only a small percentage of the Dutch people are on the wrong side. Yours, Anne. Wednesday, April 5th, 1944. My dearest Kitty, I finally realized that I need to do my schoolwork to keep from being ignorant, to get on in life, to become a journalist, because that's what I want. I know I can write. A few of my stories are good. My descriptions of the secret annex are humorous. Much of my diary is vivid and alive, but it remains to be seen whether I really have talent. Unless you write yourself, you can't know how wonderful it is. I always used to bemoan the fact that I couldn't draw, but now I am overjoyed that at least I can write. And if I don't have the talent to write books or newspaper articles, I could always write for myself. But I want to achieve more than that. I can't imagine having to live like Mother, Mrs. Van Pels, and all the women who go about their work and are then forgotten. I need to have something besides a husband and children to devote myself to. I don't want to have lived in vain like most people. I want to be useful and bring enjoyment to all people, even those I've never met. I want to go on living even after my death. And that's why I'm so grateful to God for having given me this gift, which I can use to develop myself and express all that's inside me. When I write, I can shake away all my cares. My sorrow disappears. My spirits are revived. But, and that's a big question, will I ever be able to write something great? Will I ever become a journalist or a writer? I hope so. Oh, I hope so very much. Yours, Anna M. Frank.
Today, we have to admit that no happiness can be expected in this world if those who are solely responsible for the present situation are not definitively checked in their course of unscrupulous distraction and utter disregard of law and the most elementary principles of morality.
Saturday, July 15th, 1944. Dearest Kitty, anyone who claims that the older folks have a more difficult time in the annex doesn't realize that the problems have a far greater impact on us. We're much too young to deal with these problems, yet they keep thrusting themselves on us until finally we're forced to think up a solution.
though most of the time our solutions crumble when faced with the facts. It's difficult in times like these. Ideals, dreams, and cherished hopes rise within us only to be crushed by grim reality. It's a wonder I haven't abandoned all my ideals. They seem so absurd and impractical. Yet I cling to them because I still believe, in spite of everything, that people are truly good at heart. It's utterly impossible for me to build my life on a foundation of chaos, suffering, and death. I see the world being slowly transformed into a wilderness. I hear the approaching thunder that one day will destroy us too. I feel the suffering of millions. And yet, when I look up at the sky, I somehow feel that everything will change for the better. That this cruelty too will end. That peace and tranquility will return once more. In the meantime, I must hold on to my ideals. Perhaps the day will come when I'll be able to realize them. Yours, Anna and Frank.
Wow, what an incredibly moving experience, but it isn't over yet. Next, you will get a special behind the scenes look at the secret annex. But before we go inside, I'd like to give you a little bit of context about where the annex is actually located. So I'm going to share a photo with you here. This is a neighborhood in Amsterdam called the Jordaan. And you can see the building highlighted in blue, of course, is where Anne was in hiding. Now, this little addition in the back is actually the secret annex. The building up front was her father's company. Now, sometimes people wonder, how could someone have hid in the middle of a city for over 2 years and no one ever looked for them in this building, in this space where they were hiding? And I think this photo gives us a glimpse into how that was possible. Now, if you're standing on the street here looking at this building, you can see that the buildings next to it are touching it. So you don't have any sense of depth perception to know how far back this building is going to go, which is why no one knew that this extra little addition was here. No one knew to look there. Now from here, I'm going to show you a different view of the hiding space. We're going to enter the actual location, but I want to show you before we dive in a second view that gives a little bit more context and perspective. So again, this is the street up front. Here is the office space. And here's where we just were, where the famous bookcase is. And you can see here that the hiding space were these 2 stories and then an attic. You can also see from this view why it was so important for them to be very quiet, because people working down below did not know that anyone was in hiding above them. So they had to be very, very quiet. Now, at this point, I'm going to stop and I'm going to welcome someone that you are all going to recognize to join us again. Anne is going to join us and show us around her hiding space. And during this portion of our program, feel free at any point to ask questions in the chat function or in the Q&A feature, or you can even raise your hand and we will unmute you and you can ask Anne a question yourself. There will also be some extra time at the end to ask questions. But remember, Anne doesn't know what is going to happen to her once she leaves this space. And thank you so much for sharing so many of your most intimate thoughts and feelings with us. Would you like to show us around the annex?
Yes, please. I'd be delighted. Hello, everyone. Well, here we are, right outside our beloved secret annex. As you can see, right in front of us is the bookshelf, which opens like a door. Now, this was built by a father of one of our helpers, Mr. Voskow, father of Bet Voskow, who is a brilliant carpenter and was so generous as to build this bookcase in front of the entrance to our hiding place. No one could even imagine that there would be so many spacious rooms just beyond that very bookcase. Behind here is where you would go to sort of the offices and the rest of my father's workplace. But let's open up that bookcase where there's just one small step and suddenly we're inside. Now, as you can see here, there's a staircase that goes to the main living space. But first, let's go to this door, these doors on the left, where we will go to the living quarters of the Frank family. This is where my father and mother and my sister Margot sleep. There's Pim's and Mumsy's bed. And here is where Margot sleeps. I've spent some nights here the planes and the engines rumbling, and I've had quite a fright in my own room. I would dodge back and forth between my room and this room. But eventually I find myself home again in my own bed. And one night I was able to fall asleep, but it was quite late, a little past 2. But I've spent some nights of refuge here. And now let's take a quick look at my own room, which I used to share with Margot, but I now share with Mr. Fritz Pfeffer, who is the 8th person who came into hiding with us. At around the time of November, I would say that we started thinking maybe we could take another person in, and Miep knew of this dentist, Mr. Pfeffer, who was looking for a space, and my father thought, well, if we have 7 people in hiding place, why not take one more? So when we first came here, at first I shared with Margot, and then Margot moved into the room with my parents, and now I share it with Mr. Pfeffer. There is my bed with a chair for a little bit of an extension in case I want to stretch my legs. And when we first arrived there, the room itself was a little drab actually, and all those walls were bare, but I was able to decorate it thanks to Father, who brought all my movie postcards and magazines, and so I spruced the place up a little bit, made it a little more cheerful. I hope you think so. And I'd love to show you our beloved desk, where I get much of my writing done with Kitty there. Unfortunately, I do have to I have to share it with Mr. Pfeffer, and it gets a little difficult at times because I get very invested in my studies, but he insists on doing his own studying as well. He's a very religious man, and he believes that I'm not sure. I think he doesn't believe that I'm as studious as I actually am, but I am very diligent in my studies, and I can't wait to go back to school. But for some reason, he can't seem to understand that. He can be a bit of a difficult man to share a place with. But enough of that. And I cannot find that much privacy here, unfortunately, because he's always here or in the living room. One of the 2 places I can find some refuge is in the bathroom, which I can show you for a little bit. So here's our washroom. So around 9 o'clock every morning, it's my turn to use the washroom right after Peter. And I've timed everything out to a T at 30 minutes. When I brush my teeth, I wash myself from head to toe, I comb my hair, I curl my hair, I manicure my nails, and maybe put a little bit of bleach peroxide on my top lip, and then I'm done. And yes, this is the place. And we use it during the day, but we cannot run any water or flush any water during the day because of the workers downstairs. That's only during the weekdays, however. Now we'll go back onto the landing and let's go upstairs, where we will go to the common living room space, and which is also the bedroom for the Van Pelses, Augusta and Herman. So here we have spent many a night having dinners and celebrations. It is also their bedroom, and Augusta is the main cook in the annex. So at times I think she does get a little possessive, and I understand. I try not to fault her for that. But this is where we spend a lot of our time together. I'd like to, and as you can see, it looks quite comfortable and it's quite spacious. I was quite surprised to see so many large rooms when we first came here. We're lucky to have a sink. We're lucky to have a stove here. The stove, which is actually the final resting place actually of my prized fountain pen, which accidentally found its end there. It got mixed up in some books and papers on the main table here, and got thrown in accidentally. But it was sad, but sort of sweet in a way, because I know where it went, and it made me think of how I would probably like to meet my end one day. And here we see a board game. This is one of Peter's board games. It's a sort of a stock exchange game. He plays a lot of games. He quite fancies some crosswords, and he's lucky he has a private space in his very own bedroom, which we can show you.
And I saw a question come in. Someone was asking how you could take showers.
Well, we take baths, and what we do is we take our baths over the weekend. Over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday is when we can do most of the things that many people are able to do during the week. We will take a big basin and tub full of hot water, and everybody has their own spots in the annex where they like to wash up. And at first, Margot and I were in our bathroom downstairs, but then Peter gave a pointer and reminded me that the front office of the workplace has its own private restroom. And so we are able to go beyond the bookcase during the weekends, and that's where Margot and I go to wash up. And it's quite nice. You can spread out, and we can take a little peek out the window very carefully. Of course, we can't look outside too much, unless you are in the attic, where we can get a nice view of nature and everything that's going on outside. And we can show you that in a minute after we look at Peter's room. I hope you won't mind. So here is Peter's bedroom. He's quite lucky. He has a place that he can just be alone with his thoughts and his dreams. And I have irritated him on a couple of moments to visit and linger and ask questions, because, well, we're at a very crucial time in our lives right now, and I think it's important to have someone to confide to. And he wasn't much of a talker when we first came here. I had known of Peter. He actually came to my birthday party and gave me a bar of chocolate. I thought he was kind of a boring boy at first, but now that he's finally started to open up, and we've had some great conversations here and in the attic, which is another place where it's a wonderful place to find solitude.
And we have another question. This student is asking, did you have any close calls of being discovered by anybody?
We've had a few, actually. There was one incident. It was quite foolish, actually. One of the, apparently there was the fire extinguisher had to be fixed up downstairs at the landing near the bookcase. And I guess one of the workers had placed a tool or something on the bookshelf, and it had actually jammed the latch that opens up the bookcase somehow. And so when we heard all the shuffling, and we were so certain that we were about to be discovered, and so we all stayed upstairs completely still, all of our tummies rumbling from all the nervousness, and we waited and waited, and then we heard very loud shaking and rumbling, and then we realized that it was one of the helpers just trying to get in because the bookcase had been jammed. So that's one instance. Another one was in the evening. We have the record player and we have the radio on in the evenings when it's safe to move about and make noise. And there was one evening we heard some banging on the wall next door that was quite frightening, and I was so certain that we were going to be discovered then as well. So we've had a few close calls, but nothing yet. We're quite fortunate, I think.
Thank you, Anne.
And here we have the attic of our beloved annex. And this is a very special place for me. This is a nice place where I can find some time alone, or time alone with Margot, or time alone with Peter. But it's very nice because this is one of the places we can really look outside and not risk being seen. And I've discovered I've had such a fondness of nature, and that's perhaps because I can't go outside now, but it's wonderful to at least be able to view the chestnut tree, which is just outside this window. It's brought a lot of comfort to me. But yes, indeed, it's a little damp and a little lopsided in this whole hiding place here and downstairs. But in all honesty, you probably can't find a more comfortable or spacious hiding place in all of Holland, actually. So there you have it. I've now shown you all of our lovely secret annex.